Hello everyone, I'm Karthik and in this project we are going to create this render. So let's get started. So the basic goal for this project is that we have a shoe here. We'll bring this shoe in and we want to scatter some grasses on it and we want to scatter some flowers on it. And we obviously want to render it as well. We will give the materials in Redshift. So this is our basic goal. So let's get started. I'll just turn all of them as we don't need them. We'll start with the shoe. Okay, I have a alembic here. So the first thing that I've done is I brought this shoe file here. I got the shoe file from Sketchfab and I'll provide the link in the project files, and or you can get the project file yourself. So I brought the alembic here in our Houdini. After that, I have done, let me just turn on the lighting here so it is better for your viewing. We have a shoe. I brought in the shoe. I have unpacked it, transferred the path attribute. I have converted this. I've used a convert node because I just wanted to be sure that everything is polygon here. After that, I've used an attribute rename node and I've changed the path attribute that we have transferred here to our geometry into name attribute, because everything here works with the name attribute in Houdini, and that just makes it easy. So just rename the path attribute to name attribute. Remember that it is a primitive, so you have to remember that it is a primitive attribute. Come to transform, and I've used a transform node to change the scale of the shoe. Okay, I've decreased the scale because that is the scale I want to work in, and I've nulled this out. I've used a null node and I have just called it shoe out. So this is our basic shoe, and what I want now is I want to scatter some grass and flowers on the shoe. For that, let's come to the grass setup. So basically what I have here is I have a couple of grasses that I got from Polyheaven. I'll just provide the link in the project files, or I'll provide the geometry. Okay, so this is our grasses. There are a lot of grasses here. I have done the same thing that I did with the shoe. I have unpacked it, transferred the path attribute, converted so that everything here is polygon, and I've changed the path attribute and renamed the path attribute to name. Okay, after that, there are a lot of grasses. As you can see, there are at least 7-8 variants. We do not want all of them. All we want is 3 or 4 of them. So what I've used, I think I've used 4 versions. Yeah, so we want 4 variants here, and you can see I've used a blast node. These are the grasses that we have, and I've used a blast node. I have selected this one with the help of the name attribute, and I have deleted everything else. Okay, so this is our first grass variant. This is our second grass variant here. This is our third grass variant, and I have used a blast node to create our fourth grass variant. So that's okay. That is nice. So after that, after we have our grass variant, you can see that all of these grasses, they are not sitting on the original world space here. We want them to be here at the 0, 0, 0. And you can see that these grasses are not there. We want all these grasses, all these variants to be on the world origin, that is 0, 0, 0. So for that, I have used a transform node. And in the transform node, I have used a Sandroid formula, that is $CEX, and I have put a negative here so that it comes at the 0 instead of going away. Okay, I've also rotated this grass to 90 degrees in the Z direction because I want these grass to be facing in the Z. So that's it. I've done that with everything here, and all the grasses are at our 0, 0, 0, and they are facing in the Z direction. After that, I've created a attribute create node, and I have given variant attribute to all these grasses. So this is our variant 1, a variant 0 actually. This grass is our variant 0. We have another grass which is variant 1, and variant 3, 2, and variant 3. So we have 4 variants here. Okay, 4 variants of grasses, and we want all these variants to be scattered on our shoe geometry as patches. Okay, so that's why I've given them a variant attribute. These are our variants, and we will use these variants attribute later when we scatter them. So this is very useful. You have to remember this. Okay, just understand this. After that, I merged all the variants here, and this is something that I've done for the viewport purposes only, so that we get better preview. I have used rel point b box here, and I've given a mass attribute in the z direction, and I've used a color node here so that we get better previews for our grasses here. Okay, you don't really have to do this, and even if you're doing it, this doesn't really affect your renders here. So after merging all of them, you can straight go ahead and use a null node and call it out. Okay, so this is our setup for the grasses. We have our base grasses geometry that we brought in. We did the usual thing, then we deleted everything. We selected everything, all the grass variants that we wanted with the help of the blast node, and delete non-selected. We use a transform node to bring them to 0 0 0 and rotate them, and after that we have used a attribute create node here to create variants here, merge them and null them out. These are grasses, but we also want flowers, so we will do the same thing with our flower geometry. This flower geometry also I got from Polyheaven. It's a free geometry, you can get it, but I have made some changes here, so I'll provide the Alembic file here. I have the Alembic file for the flower. I've done the same thing here, unpacked it, transfer the attributes, path attribute, convert all the geometry to polygon. I've used the attribute rename node in the primitive to change the path to name, and done the same thing. I want it at 0 0 0 and facing towards z direction. I've created a variant here, which actually is not needed, but you can turn this off, don't really need it. And this is also for preview purposes. I have given it a yellow color so that it looks better in our preview. So you don't really have to do this, but if you want to, you can. This is the same formula that I've used in the grass, and I've given the yellow color here so that this flower looks yellow and it's looking better in our viewport. So you can do this if you want, but it's not necessary. After transforming it into the 0 and rotating it to z direction, you can use a null node and just call it flower out. Okay, so we have our both the geometries. We have our shoes and we have our grass and our flowers. And now we can do the setup here, through which we will scatter all of our points on the shoe geometry, and then we will copy our grass geometry on all those scattered points. Okay, so come to the grass setup here. This is our grass setup. So come to object merge. I have object merge our shoe from the shoe that we generated here. This is the null node that we are using. So this is our object merge. This is our object merge, and where we have used our shoe, we have merged our shoe. I'm just transforming it a bit. Okay, I want it to be facing like this. I want to change the position like this. After that, I have used an attribute noise node. I've used attribute noise node, which will give us color attribute. The colors that are generated on our shoe are white and black. Okay, so on the white area we are going to scatter points, and all the black areas which will not have scattered points here. So we are going to use this color to scatter our points. Next, before scattering the points, I will give all these geometry normal, because we want all our scattered points to inherit normal attribute. So that's why we are using a normal node here, which will generate which will generate the normal attribute. The scattered point, we are using a scatter node to scatter 3000 points on our geometry, and we are using the CD color, the CD attribute, the color attribute, to scatter our points. All the white areas will have scattered points, all the black areas will not have scattered points. Okay, so these are the values that I've used. I have scattered 3000 points. The density attribute that I've used is CD. After that, I want these scattered points to have p-scale values, okay, so that when we are copying our grass geometry on this, they will inherit this p-scale value, and thus all of them will have random p-scale values. So that is that. I've used attribute Redshift float, and attribute name that we are generating is p-scale. I'm using min max here, and 0.03 is the minimum value and maximum value is 0.3. So the minimum p-scale value is 0.03 for all some of the points, and the maximum value is 0.3. Okay, I hope you're following this. I hope you get it. After that, I'm using a scatter and align. So with the help of scatter and align, what we can do is we can not only control the p-scale values, but we can control the rotation value. So we want all these points to have randomized rotation value as well. Okay, so that is why I've used a scatter align, and I've changed the normal direction to Z here, and in the rotation I've changed the maximum random cone and the minimum angle value and the maximum angle value, and also I've played with the offset angle value here as well. We already have a p-scale value. We have already generated the p-scale value in the attribute Redshift flow, and I'm also playing with the p-scale value here as well. You don't necessarily need to have the attribute Redshift if you are going to use the scatter align, but this is the way I like to work. And finally, I'm going to control my p-scale value here, but I just generated the p-scale value beforehand. So that is that. Okay, after that, what we are going to do is I've used an attribute triangle here, and I'm multiplying the p-scale value with the CDR value. So what is the CDR value? The CD is a vector value, and we are getting 3 float values for that vector, and R, that is the red, is one of them. So here what I've done is I've generated the color here, and what I want is I want the scattered points, I want these scattered points which are near the black area to have smaller p-scale values as compared to the points which are generated on the white area. Okay, so all the points which are being generated near this black area will have smaller p-scale values, and that's what I've done. I want them to have smaller p-scale value. That's what I've done here in the attribute triangle. F p-scale is multiplied by cd.r. Okay, after that, let's just turn this off. I'll turn this off as well. Okay, so you can see that we have our grass. We are bringing all our grasses, all the 4 attributes, and we have our points here, and we are using copy to points node to copy our grasses to our points. The only thing is that we are scattering these grasses combined. Okay, all of these grasses here are combined together, and they are getting scattered as is. And okay, so we have 4 variants here, and all the variants are combined together, they are merged together, and they are getting scattered, and we do not want that. We want all the 4 variants to get scattered separately. We want all of them to form small patches, or we want all of them to scatter in small patches, but that is not happening here. As you can see, all of them are merged together and they are getting scattered. To scatter all the variants individually and not together, we are going to use attribute from pieces node. As you can see, as I turned it off, they are scattered as a single entity. All of them are merged together and then getting scattered. If I turn this on, we are getting these different variants getting scattered as patches, and you can see all the four different colors here represents different variants here, different variants of grasses. If I turn the color on here, and you can see that some of the points have blue color, some of them have pink color, some of them have yellow and then light blue. If I turn on the variant attribute, yeah, this attribute, you can see that the points which are yellow are getting the variant number 0, the points which are pink are getting the variant number 1, and the points which are blue are getting 3, and the light blue ones are getting the 2. Okay, so all different variants of the grasses are getting scattered as patches. And how is it happening? That is happening because in the attribute from pieces, this attribute from pieces is getting connected to our grasses, the 4 variants here as library. Attribute from a geometry to library, these are connected to our grasses, and all our scattered points are connected here. So these attribute from pieces, what this does is it is providing all these points with different variant values. Okay, and how is it providing that values? How is it scattering that variant value to all these points? With the help of patch mode. Okay, the mode that is being used to provide all these scattered points with variant attribute is patch. I can change it. I'll play with the variant here so that you can see what is happening. The mode is patches, and if I come to the patches and change the patch size, you can see we will have different sizes, different strengths. Okay, so this is how all these points are getting the variant value. And as there are 4 grass variants, there are 4 variants scattered on all these points, and this is how we are going to get the scattered version here. So I'm using the attribute from pieces node in the patches node, and the piece attribute is variant. I played with the values here, I've done the patch size to 0.51. The strength and distortion sizes are here. I've used the color attribute, but you don't need to use it. This was just for preview purposes only. And after the copy to points, I'm using a null node. I'm just calling it grass out, and these are our grasses which are scattered on our points. So that is that. We have our grass setup, we have our shoe setup now. What I'm doing is I'm object merging our shoe here, and I've used an attribute from map node, and to give this texture to our shoe, this texture was provided in the sketchfab. This texture also I got from the sketchfab with this geometry, so I'll give you the link for that. And in the attribute from map, just load the texture that we got, load the texture for this shoe. Okay, and after that use a null node, call it out, and then we have a flower setup. So for the flower setup, what I've done is in the grass setup, when you come here, after the attribute wrangle where we have multiplied our p scale with the CD, and we have our randomized rotational value and the randomized p scale value, I have used null node, and I out these points here, calling it flower setup out. Okay, so we have these points in the flower setup. I have object merged that null node called the flower setup out. I'm using a delete node. We have all these points here. I null them in, I brought them in. I'm using a delete node, and I am deleting 90% of all these points here. Okay, the entirety is points, number is on, randomize, come to the random and enable it, and delete the number of the percent of scattered points that you want to delete, and I'm deleting 90% of the points here. And then I'm going to use a copy to points node, and the flower geometry that we have generated earlier is object merged here. I'm going to use a copy to points node, and I'm copying this flower geometry to our scattered points here. And we already have these scattered points already have the p scale value and the randomized rotational value, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay, so this is what we are doing, and in the copy to points I'm using the pack and instance as usual, using a null. You can call it out or don't, doesn't really matter. Let's just turn on all these setups. In the grass, I'll just turn this grass out. And this is how we have scattered our grass, we have scattered our flowers, and we have scattered and we have our shoe geometry here. Okay, now I have used a grid node because in the background I wanted a background, so I've used a grid and put it in the background. We have two lights here, but actually I've only used one light, this one, and I've used this light as a rectangular. I've used this light in a rectangular form. I have changed the size here 1.2 to 0.4 to 0.4. I kept the spread to 0.44 and I normalized the intensity. I have changed the intensity to 10, and this is our light affecting all our geometry. So this light is affecting everything. It is affecting the background, it is affecting the grasses, the flowers, the shoe, everything. I've used another grid here, and this grid is functioning as a reflector so that we get, so in this, from this position, from when we see it from this position from the camera, this grid is working as a reflector, and we are getting the fill light, the needed fill light for this render, okay, for our geometry here. So that is that. And for the camera, simple, come to a position or come to an angle from where you want the camera, and then just press control and click on the camera, or left click on the camera, and you will get your camera. Okay, so now let's play with the materials. Come here, in the material section you will see that I have three materials here. First, the shoe one, and as I said, I got the shoe texture from the Sketchfab, which I am using here, and I've connected it to standard material, to the base color, and everything else is just default value. Okay, I have another material here which is a ground texture or the mud texture, which I got from polyheaven.com. I'm connecting the base color to the standard material base color, the roughness texture to the roughness, and I'm connecting the normal to the bump map, which is getting connected to the bump endpoint. So these are the two textures that we have. One is the texture for the shoe and the one is texture for the mud, and I'm mixing both of these materials with the help of a material blender. Okay, with the help of a material blender, and the blend color that I'm using is a mask. You can use CD as well. I'll just show you what mask is, where I've come to grass setup. After the transform, I've copied this attribute noise here, and I've pasted it here. So this is our mask attribute. So this is our mask attribute that you can see, and this is the attribute that we are using. We turn this to float so that you can see it better. Grayscale. Okay, so this is our shoe, and you can see that we have mask. Some of the places are black and some of the places are white. We are going to use this mask. Everything where there's white, the value is 1. We are going to apply the ground texture, and everything where the value is black, we are going to apply the shoe texture. Okay, so this is the mask that we are using here. I'll just turn this on. So this is our setup in the material section, and as I said, in the shoe I am using a particle attribute lookup node to bring in the mask attribute, and I'm using that mask attribute to blend color this, to blend the both the materials, the shoe material and our ground material. Okay, for the grass material, I have textures for the grass that I got from Polyheaven along with the geometry. So I'm connecting the base color to base color standard. This is a standard material. I'm connecting the base color to base color. I'm connecting the roughness to roughness, and I'm connecting the bump, the normal map to normal map here. It's pretty simple. Same for the flowers. I got the flower from Polyheaven as well, and the base color is going to base color, the roughness is going to roughness, and the normal is going to normal. Got the material and the geometry from Polyheaven, as I said. After we have created our materials, come to the geometry networks here. In the grass setup, you can come to the render, and as you can see, the material applied is grass. In the shoe, in the render, the material applied is shoe. In the flower setup, the material applied is flower. Another thing that you need to do is in the flower setup, come to Redshift and instancing. I have turned on the instance swap level pack primitive. As you can go here, when we use the copy to point node, we are pack and instancing here. We have turned this on. So this is better as we are using the instance geometry for our, so it just helps us for optimizing the geometry and so that our computer works faster. In the grass as well, come to the Redshift object, instancing, turn on the instance swap level pack primitives. Okay. In the out, I have created the Redshift drop and Redshift IPR1. I have done that by simply going to the Redshift here and clicked on Redshift. Okay, so this generates these two. In the Redshift, I have kept the progressor pass as 120 for testing purposes. And that is that. I don't think there's anything else that I need to show you. In the post effects, I turned on the color alert in Ampli preview here. So everything else is fine. So this was our project, and I'll just do a quick render so that you can see what is the final render. Okay guys, so that was the tutorial. I hope you guys liked it and learned something from it. If you have any doubts or questions, just drop them in the comment section and I'll reply to them. And if you want the project files, you can get it from my Patreon. I'll link it in the description as well. Subscribe to the channel and hit that like button because it definitely encouraged me for creating more tutorials for you guys. And thank you and have a great day. Bye.